Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing between two great rivers. The year is 3500 BCE. You're in a place the ancient Greeks would later call Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. The name itself tells the story. Meso meaning middle, and Potamos meaning river. You're standing in what we now call Iraq, in the Fertile Crescent that curves between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and you're witnessing the birth of civilization itself. This land between the rivers wasn't chosen by accident. While most of the ancient world struggled with unpredictable weather and barren soil, Mesopotamia had something revolutionary: two rivers that flooded predictably each spring, depositing rich dark silt across the plains. The Tigris in the east, fierce and fast-flowing. The Euphrates in the west, gentler and more forgiving. Between them, life could flourish in ways it never had before. Around 10,000 BCE, something extraordinary happened here. Humans stopped wandering and started staying. They looked at wild grasses and thought, what if we could grow these ourselves? This was the agricultural revolution, and the fertile crescent of Mesopotamia was its cradle. Wild wheat and barley grew abundantly in these lands, and our ancestors began the patient work of domesticating them, transforming nomadic hunters into the world's first farmers. By 4500 BCE, a remarkable people had settled in southern Mesopotamia. We call them the Sumerians, though they called themselves the black-headed people. They didn't just farm, they organized, they built, they created something the world had never seen. Cities, not just villages or settlements, but actual urban centers with thousands of people living together, cooperating, creating a complex society. Picture the city of Uruk around 3200 BCE, with perhaps 40,000 inhabitants. It was the largest human settlement on Earth. Massive mud brick walls surrounded it, stretching for 6 miles. Inside, something revolutionary was happening. This wasn't just a big village, it was a true city with specialized workers. Some people only made pottery, others only baked bread. Some were priests, others were scribes. For the first time in history, not everyone had to grow their own food. But how do you keep track of a city? How do you remember who owns what? Who owes whom grain? How much barley the temple has stored? Around 3400 BCE, the Sumerians solved this problem with one of humanity's greatest inventions, writing. It started simply enough, pressing a reed stylus into soft clay tablets to make marks representing sheep, grain, or beer. These wedge-shaped marks would later be called cuneiform, from the Latin cuneus meaning wedge. At first, writing was purely practical, almost boring. A tablet might read, 29 sheep received from Cushim. But here's the beautiful thing, we know Cushim's name. An accountant from 5,000 years ago, making Cushim possibly the first named person in all of recorded history. What began as inventory lists would eventually become poetry, laws, love letters, and legends that would survive millennia. Around 3500 BCE, another world-changing invention emerged from Mesopotamia, the wheel. Not for transportation at first, but for pottery. The potter's wheel allowed craftsmen to create perfectly symmetrical vessels with unprecedented speed. Within a few centuries, someone had the ingenious idea to turn wheels on their side, attach them to a platform, and suddenly transportation was revolutionized forever. The rivers gave life, but they were also unpredictable, sometimes too much water, sometimes too little, and rarely at the right time. So the Mesopotamians became master engineers, creating sophisticated irrigation systems with canals, dikes, and reservoirs. They learned to redirect water from the rivers to their fields, controlling the life-giving flow. These weren't simple ditches, some canals stretched for miles, requiring constant maintenance and cooperation between communities. All this cooperation, all this complexity, required organization. Mesopotamian society developed distinct layers. At the top, kings and priests who communed with the gods. Below them, nobles and wealthy merchants. Then skilled craftsmen and scribes. Further down, farmers and laborers. And at the bottom, enslaved people, often prisoners of war. It wasn't equal or fair by modern standards, but it was organized in a way that allowed thousands of people to live and work together, building something greater than any individual could achieve alone. So here we are, standing at the threshold of civilization. Writing has been invented. Cities are rising. Wheels are turning. But this is only the beginning of Mesopotamia's story. The Sumerians were just the first chapter in a saga that would span thousands of years, encompassing mighty empires, legendary kings, and innovations that still shape our world today. As Mesopotamian cities grew more complex, the people looked up at the night sky and wondered. They saw patterns in the stars, rhythms in the movements of the moon and planets, and they began to observe, to record, to calculate. The Mesopotamians became some of history's first astronomers, not out of idle curiosity alone, but out of necessity. They needed to know when to plant crops, when the rivers would flood, when religious festivals should be held. Around 3000 BCE, they divided the year into 12 lunar months, creating one of humanity's earliest calendars. They tracked the movements of Venus, Jupiter, and Mercury across the sky with such precision that their observations would influence astronomy for millennia to come. Look at your watch, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. You're looking at the legacy of Mesopotamian mathematics. Unlike our base-10 system, they developed a base 60 system, possibly because 60 can be divided evenly by so many numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30. This made calculations easier for trade, construction, and astronomy. Every time you tell someone I'll meet you in 15 minutes, you're speaking in the mathematical language of ancient Mesopotamia. In the heart of every major Mesopotamian city stood an architectural marvel, the ziggurat. These weren't pyramids, they were massive stepped towers, built from millions of mud bricks, rising toward the heavens in distinct tiers. The most famous, the ziggurat of Uri, rose about 70 feet into the sky around 2100 BCE. Each city had its patron deity, and the ziggurat was that god's earthly home, a bridge between the human world below and the divine realm above. Priests would climb the long stairways to the shrine at the summit, bringing offerings and seeking divine guidance for their city. Remember those simple accounting marks pressed into clay? By 2500 BCE, cuneiform had evolved into something extraordinary. The pictographs had become more abstract, faster to write, and capable of expressing complex ideas. Now you could write not just 10 sheep, but the king commanded. The storm raged. She loved him. The Mesopotamians began recording laws, recording history, recording their dreams and fears. Literature was being born. Around 2100 BCE, scribes began writing down one of humanity's first great stories, the Epic of Gilgamesh. It tells of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who was 2/3 god and 1/3 man, a hero who sought immortality after the death of his beloved friend Enki. This wasn't just entertainment, it was philosophy pressed into clay. Through Gilgamesh's journey, the ancient Mesopotamians explored profound questions. What does it mean to be human? How do we face death? What legacy will we leave behind? These same questions still resonate today. Over 4,000 years later, around 2100 BCE, King Urnamu of Ur created something revolutionary, a written code of laws. Not the whims of a judge, not oral tradition that could change with each telling, but permanent, written laws that everyone could know. This is the world's oldest surviving law code, predating the more famous Code of Hammurabi by about 3 centuries. It established fines for various offenses. If you severed someone's foot, you paid 10 shekels of silver. If you caused a miscarriage, you paid specific compensation. Justice was no longer just personal revenge. It was becoming systematic, proportional, predictable. Mesopotamia had rich soil and water, but it lacked many essential resources. No timber for building, no stone for monuments, no metals for tools and weapons. So the Mesopotamians became traders, and by 3000 BCE, they had established trade networks that stretched for thousands of miles. Cedar wood came from Lebanon, copper came from Oman, lapis lazuli, that brilliant blue stone beloved by Mesopotamian artisans, traveled all the way from the mountains of Afghanistan. Imagine 5,000 years ago, a blue stone journeyed over 2,000 miles by donkey caravan to become a piece of jewelry in Mesopotamia. Beer wasn't just a drink, it was civilization in a cup. The Sumerians worshipped Ninkasi, the goddess of beer, and brewing was considered a sacred art, primarily practiced by women. Workers were often paid in beer rations, typically about 2 liters per day for laborers, more for administrators. The famous hymn to Ninkasi, written around 1800 BCE, was both a prayer and a recipe, describing the brewing process in poetic detail. Beer was safer than water, more nutritious than bread alone, and it brought people together. Some scholars even argue that the desire to reliably grow grain for beer may have been one of the motivations for settling down and farming in the first place. From the mathematics we still use today, to the beer we still enjoy, to the stories that still move us, Mesopotamia wasn't just creating a civilization. They were creating the foundations of human culture itself. But empires rise, and empires fall, and the land between the rivers was about to witness the rise of powers that would reshape the ancient world. Minutes 21 to 30 by 2300 BCE. The patchwork of independent Sumerian city-states, Uruk, Lagash, Kish, had been competing and warring with each other for centuries. Each city had its own king, its own army, its own ambitions. And then came a man who would change everything. His name was Sargon, and his story reads like legend. Born of humble origins, some texts claim his mother was a priestess who set him adrift in a basket on the Euphrates. Much like the later story of Moses, Sargon rose to become cupbearer to the king of Kish, but Sargon had greater visions. Around 2334 BCE, he founded a new capital city called Akkad, and from there, he did something unprecedented. He conquered all of Sumer, uniting the warring city-states under a single rule. This was the world's first true empire, the Akkadian Empire, stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. For the first time, the land between the rivers spoke with one voice. With Sargon's conquest came a linguistic shift. While Sumerian continued to be used for religious and scholarly purposes, much like Latin in medieval Europe, Akkadian became the language of administration and daily life. Akkadian was a Semitic language, related to Hebrew and Arabic, and it would dominate Mesopotamia for the next 2,000 years. The blending of Sumerian and Akkadian cultures created something richer than either alone. Sumerian gods merged with Akkadian deities. Sumerian literature was translated and expanded, and the cuneiform script was adapted to write this new language. Mesopotamian kings weren't merely political leaders, they were seen as chosen by the gods to maintain order in the world. After Sargon, kings began claiming divine favor more explicitly. They built monuments declaring that the gods themselves had granted them authority over the land. This concept of divine kingship would spread throughout the ancient world. From Egypt to Persia to Rome, the king was responsible for building temples, maintaining irrigation systems, defending the people, and ensuring justice. In return, he received loyalty, tribute, and reverence. It was a social contract written in clay and enforced by both earthly armies and heavenly mandate. In a world where few could read or write, how did you prove your identity? How did you mark your property or authorize a transaction? The Mesopotamians invented an elegant solution: cylinder seals. These were small stone cylinders, intricately carved with images and writing, that could be rolled across wet clay to leave a distinctive impression. Each person's seal was unique: your signature, your identity, your personal mark. Archaeologists have found thousands of these seals, tiny masterpieces of craftsmanship depicting gods, animals, heroes, battling monsters, and daily life scenes. When you pressed your seal into clay, you were making it official, binding, witnessed by the gods themselves. Sargon's empire lasted for about 140 years through his sons and grandsons, until around 2154 BCE when it suddenly collapsed. For years, historians debated why such a powerful empire fell so quickly. Then scientists discovered something remarkable: evidence of a severe, prolonged drought that struck the region around 2200 BCE. The rains failed, crops withered, the great cities that depended on agriculture couldn't sustain themselves. People abandoned the northern cities and migrated south or to the mountains. It was perhaps history's first recorded example of climate change bringing down a civilization. Even the mightiest empire couldn't survive when the heavens themselves turned hostile. After decades of chaos following Akkad's fall, a new power arose from the south. Around 2112 BCE, King Ur-Nammu of Ur, the same king who created that early law code, established what historians call the Ur the Third Dynasty. This was a Sumerian renaissance, a conscious revival of old Sumerian culture and traditions. The Sumerians were back in charge, and they built monuments, composed literature, and administered their realm with remarkable efficiency. They created one of history's first bureaucratic states, with detailed records of everything: grain harvests, textile production, livestock counts, worker assignments. Thousands of administrative tablets survive, giving us an incredibly detailed picture of how this society functioned. During the Ur III period and beyond, Mesopotamian astronomers refined their observations to extraordinary levels. Using their basic mathematics, they could predict lunar eclipses, track planetary movements, and calculate the length of the year with impressive accuracy. They divided the sky into 12 sections, creating the zodiac that we still recognize today: Taurus the bull, Leo the lion, Scorpio the scorpion. These weren't just pretty pictures, they were a sophisticated system for mapping the heavens and predicting celestial events. When you read your horoscope today, you're looking at a tradition that stretches back over 4,000 years to Mesopotamian stargazing. By 2000 BCE, Mesopotamia had developed formal schools called Edaba, literally tablet house. These weren't for everyone. Education was expensive and primarily reserved for boys from wealthy families who would become scribes, priests, or administrators. Students spent years learning to write hundreds of cuneiform signs, practicing on clay tablets that they would smooth out and reuse. They copied classic texts, learned mathematics, studied Sumerian literature. Even though Akkadian was the spoken language, we know about student life because some frustrated pupils inscribed complaints on their tablets. The teacher caned me. "My father doesn't understand how hard this is. I'm so tired of copying the same text over and over." Across 4,000 years, the student experience sounds remarkably familiar. The land between the rivers had seen the rise of the world's first cities, the first empires, the first written laws. It had survived climate catastrophe and been reborn. But new powers were stirring beyond Mesopotamia's borders, and the most famous empire of them all was about to write its name across the ancient world in letters that would never be forgotten.